Hello and welcome to another tropical update from Cayman Hurricane Center. I'm Adam, and we are talking about the recently or earlier updated Hurricane Nate, which, after passing through the Caribbean, the Western Caribbean Sea, ended in the Gulf of Mexico, made landfall, first landfall in Louisiana, the very southeastern tip of Louisiana, before making its final landfall in Biloxi, Mississippi, or at least 5 miles west of Biloxi, Mississippi. Just going over the particular details on the latest advisory. The eye of Hurricane Nate is now moving over Keesler Air Force Base, where the hurricane hunters reside. The location is 30.5 north, 88.9 west, or about 5 miles north of Biloxi, Mississippi, or about 70 miles east-northeast of New Orleans, Louisiana. Maximum sustained winds 85 miles per hour. Present movement north at 20 miles per hour. Minimum central pressure of 984 millibars. And this system is producing quite a hefty amount of rain that already poured down from the Caribbean and is now pouring through parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and it is still, to this point, causing rainfall issues for the Caribbean. Here is the later radar imagery of Nate, and as you could see with Nate, the core of the system pulling in shore, still have these feeder bands still coming in, and this will be producing more rainfall issues as time goes forward. Still producing some issues across here over Louisiana, and will continue to do so for Mississippi and parts of Alabama and Florida as we go through. Here is the latest forecast cone of Nate, and as you could see, it's expected to continue on its speedily route across across the south central U.S., eventually getting up to the northeast, East Coast, and New England area. Luckily, it will weaken down to a depression and then eventually a remnant low. However, to still provide rainfall for the areas, and actually beneficial rainfall for areas up here which actually need the rain. Just a quick note to point out, not a very good year for the Gulf Coast of the U.S., with impacts from Harvey coming in through here, and also Cindy earlier in the year, with Irma coming up after Harvey. So not a great year for the Gulf of Mexico. Also pointing out with another tropical storm that came across here. Name escapes me for some reason at this moment in time. But anyway, just going on further here. Here are the key messages from the National Hurricane Center about Nate. Nate is expected to bring some life-threatening storm surge flooding near and well east of the center as it continues to make landfall. Storm surge warnings are in effect. It has, as of the latest advisory, this hadn't updated actually. Let me, whilst I'm here, take a look. Nope, has not. But just to point the On the latest advisory, the storm surge warnings have been discontinued from the mouth of the Mississippi River to Puente Alahache. But in terms of all the other warnings and what is in place, hurricane warning in effect for the mouth of Pearl River to Alabama-Florida border, storm surge warning from north of Puente de la Hatch to Oskaloosa/Walton County line, Florida. Tropical storm warning in effect for metropolitan New Orleans, the Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Maurepas, Grand Isle, Louisiana, to the mouth of Pearl River, and east of the Alabama-Florida border to Indian Pass, Florida. So besides that, as mentioned, the storm surge threat, conditions of hurricane intensity that would continue to spread onshore with Mississippi, Alabama. And as it is with Nate's forward speed, at least that brings somewhat of a saving grace, because the rainfall threat, even though it's there, even though it will be producing some issues, it's not a slow-moving system, and the rainfall won't be lasting for days and days on end, like what we had with Harvey, and even to lesser extent to what we had with Irma. So as per mentioned, Nate would be bringing heavy rainfall, 3 to 6 inches, with isolated of 10 east of Mississippi River, from central Gulf Coast into deep south, eastern Tennessee Valley, and the southern Appalachians through Monday, resulting in potential flash flooding for those areas. Moisture from Nate interacting with the frontal zone, which is what is pushing Nate towards the north and eventually to the northeast to northeast. Will also bring 2 to 5 inches of rain, with isolated totals of 7 inches across the Ohio Valley. Central Appalachians Sunday and Monday will increase the risk for flash flooding across those locations. This was the latest, this was the recon missions, most recent recon missions, should I say, for Nate. This was the very last recon mission before landfall. Very busy evening for the hurricane hunters, as they've been passing through this system right through landfall. 9 total center passes kept them very busy through the system, but luckily not only with radar data, but with actual observations inside the storm, proving valuable data for the areas affected. So let's just have a quick review here of what happened with Nate and the effects that it has caused throughout the Caribbean, Central America, and also obviously now affecting the United States. So a couple days ago, Nate decided to form down here in the southwestern Caribbean Sea as part of a broad monsoon trough, interacting with a couple of tropical waves and a trough of low pressure along this area here. A couple of tropical wave located generally there from Cuba down to southwestern Caribbean. A trough of low pressure along here. As some may remember, Invest Area 99L that formed out here, moved over Florida, gave Florida some rain issues across to there, and then also eventually spreading across towards the west and impacting the portions of the northern Gulf Coast. As time went on, the rainfall threat already occurring in the Western Caribbean, providing some heavy downpours for areas of Jamaica, Cuba, parts of the Bahamas, Florida, the Cayman Islands, the Yucatan, Belize, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, even all the way down into Panama. And so caused a lot of threat there even before the system formed. As the system formed and moved generally northwestwards or northwestwards, made a landfall in Nicaragua, eastern Honduras, came offshore, pulled a bit north, even northeastwards, across the northwestern Caribbean before continuing back towards the northwest. Was originally supposed to make landfall across the northeastern tip of the Yucatan. That did not come to pass. Eventually, as the system moved into the Gulf of Mexico, it continued to intensify, becoming a hurricane. As the hurricane continued to move northwards, eventually making landfall in southeastern Louisiana before making its final landfall west of Biloxi, Mississippi. The storm brought tropical storm conditions to Nicaragua, Honduras, and also brought tropical storm in gust for the Cayman Islands, as well as tropical storm conditions for the western tip of Cuba. The massive amounts of rainfall caused a lot of issues with regards to flooding and mudslides for areas across Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and Honduras. And this proved to be deadly as it has taken lives. It has taken, I think it was 36 lives. Let me just confirm that here. Has taken, yes, 36 lives along Central America, and still 14 missing. 10 in Costa Rica, 1 recorded in El Salvador, 3 in Honduras. Nicaragua had 15, Panama had 7. In terms of missing, 4 in Costa Rica, 3 in Honduras, and 7 in Nicaragua. And of course, with the stuff ongoing for the United States, and no yet such reports out of the United States for any missing or dead. And in terms of the rescue missions and how much damage, it's still way too early to say on what that is, as the system is moving through those areas. What I can say is that for the area of Grand Cayman Islands, which is where Cayman Hurricane Center headquarters is located, I can tell you that the rainfall had proved to be an issue where localized flooding was an issue. A lot of the low-lying areas on Grand Cayman did end up seeing flooding. There was some road damages along the highway that was due to flooding. Also, the wave heights caused damages to docks around the area, and also the gusty winds did tear a few trees. But for the most part, the Cayman Islands remained rather unscathed compared to other areas like Nicaragua, Honduras, Costa Rica, Panama, and Louisiana and Mississippi. But again, this is a very clear reminder that storms, whether the center of the system affects you or not, storms like this, where it's big, broad, monsoonal, it only takes the outer bands to cause some serious issues. Even to the point that this is causing some issues in Florida as well in terms of rainfall and potential flooding issues along there. So you guys in Florida, don't think you're fully out of it just yet. To drive this point home as well, here is the broad look at the tropical Atlantic. I will mention about the other systems out there in just a second, but just to point out to you guys that even though that the center of the system had made landfall here, that this system is quite big and it is producing rains and shower activity all the way from Florida across Cuba, still is very much affecting our area here in the Cayman Islands and still affecting areas of Nicaragua, Honduras, and even into the Yucatan area. So this area is still seeing a lot of rainfall, a lot of moisture from Nate. So even as the system continues to move north and east, expect to see some more rainfall and moisture issues across areas along here for the Gulf Coast, as well as the rainfall threat still expecting to be an issue for our area here in the Cayman Islands, as well as for Cuba. And luckily, it looks like it will eventually start to dry out for areas of Nicaragua, Honduras, and the Yucatan. So that is good news there. Just quickly making note of other areas of interest. We do have Invest Area 91L here out in the Atlantic. Not likely to affect anybody. However, there is a fair chance that this thing will develop into a subtropical or tropical storm during the next day or so. This system is expected to drift towards the south and eventually southwest, eventually flipping around and out to sea once again. Again, not expected to affect anybody, but if this does become the next storm, the next name on the list is Ophelia. Another thing to take note of is there are a couple of tropical waves out in the Atlantic that are being monitored. Fair, decent blow up of convection for some of these waves, but nothing yet at any immediate threat to develop. There's also another area of disturbed weather east of the Bahamas, north of Puerto Rico, that is also being monitored closely for any potential development. At the moment, nothing too serious to take note of. However, this system is expected to generally move off towards the west, maybe providing some rainfall for areas of the Bahamas, Cuba, maybe South Florida. Again, just depending on the exact track. There are some model guidances that take this further south, so Cuba, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, and some that take it further north, northwestern Bahamas, Florida, etc., etc. But at this moment in time, nothing too much of any threat to develop, with the exception of Invest 91L up there in the North Atlantic, but not expected to impact land. So with the formation of Nate, it officially makes 2017 a hyperactive hurricane season. And with this season only still a month and so to go, there's still a chance for a lot more development to happen. A reminder that yes, although we had a big peak in September, there is another big peak in October, and a lot of activity could happen in October, especially that as we get into the late part of the season, the activity becomes less of out in the Atlantic and becomes more of Western Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, Southeast US development, and obviously more threats to land. And as we go into November, the threat decreases further, but still remains for the Western Caribbean region. So, yeah, just keep on monitoring the situation. You know, we still got the rest of the season to go through. Still be prepared for whatever this season, or the rest of the season, will throw at you. And don't think for 1 minute that since September is over that the threats are over, because that is certainly not the case. Anyway, that is going to be it from me. Just another quick look here at the satellite imagery and the radar imagery as Nate continues to move further and further inshore on Mississippi. But this is it from me here. I'll probably be back to do an overall recap of Nate and the effects after the system has gone away and the effects have now stopped occurring for the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico. Anyway, thanks for now. Bye.